All right. Well, good day, everyone, and we want to welcome you to one of PrimePay's monthly broker webinars, always part of a series throughout the year. We're thrilled that you could join us here today. Today's title is Using Payroll as an Asset for Your Agency. So we are thrilled to have you here today. My name is Steve Jackson. I'm the Senior Vice President of Strategic Development and Channel Sales here at PrimePay. And again, as I had said, I'm thrilled to have you join us. You've got a lot of busyness and schedules in your way each and every day, and so we're thrilled that you have taken the time here today to sit with us. I am getting over a cold as well, so I'm going to hopefully get through this. Feeling fine, just, probably sound a little different to you all, but I'm thrilled to be able to bring this content, this information to you here today. Why don't we cover some of the logistics here of our webinar. We always, as always, we do want to hear from you, but you may have noticed we have muted your lines. And we do that just for background noise, right? Just stuff that's always occurring in and around you. So your lines are muted, but we would love to hear from you. And if you would, go into the Go to Meeting menu bar, go ahead and type in your question right on there. As I'm going through the webinar here today, I will try to address that specific question as I go throughout the webinar, or at the very end. I'll try to tackle that just based on time. If it's a specific question, today's topic is maybe a little more specific to you, to your agency, and how you drive business through your agency, ultimately to your clients. So you might have a very specific question. Well, we're going to take that offline, and we will absolutely address that with you here at the end. One of the common questions, that we do receive, I guess, on a consistent basis is, are you recording your webinar? Yes, we generally do, and you will find a recording of this webinar posted on our public Broker Concierge YouTube channel, and it's usually posted within 2 days. So by Friday, roughly end of the week, that should be posted there to that site, and you can view that. But do look for our follow-up emails, as we'll provide some additional information on where to find that. So with that, I think that'll cover the logistics here today. So using payroll as an asset for your agency. One of the strong, I guess, just pillars or tenets of what we try to do here at PrimePay through these webinars is be able to drive specific sales strategies or specific pieces of technical or regulatory guidance to you as a benefits broker, benefits consultant, and be able to transform that strategy or regulatory guidance into some strong practical application. We hope that there's a way for you to increase your agency's revenue, increase prospecting efforts, retention efforts, things that you're trying to grow for within your agency. We hope that you can capitalize on this information that we're utilizing here in each of these webinars. And today is no different. The topic is a little different, right? We're not going to focus today so specifically on regulatory compliance and driving, specific examples on how you can communicate that effectively to your clients. We're really going to be talking about you. We're talking about your agency. How can you continue to grow and use specific topics, solutions, strategies, challenges that your business owner clients are facing that would help propel your agency to the next level? And that's really where we want to take today's webinar here. So, in the webinar invite, we talked about this cashing in on payroll with your agency. But it's really centered around how you can best utilize payroll as a strong asset, thinking about payroll as a strong asset for your agency. Let's go ahead and dig into the agenda here today. As you can see here from the picture that I'm showing here is this picture of this business owner, right? He has a limited amount of time in a day. I think if you guys think about your schedule, right? Limited amount of time during a day. Seems like the time is just consuming you. And do you have enough time in a day to get done what you need to get done? Well, what I want, as we go through the agenda, as we dig into the content here today, I want you to think about you as a business owner. You're the business owner of your client, okay? Think of a specific client that you work with, and I want you to kind of put yourself in their shoes. So we're going to talk about a little bit here about the business owner's perspective. We're going to talk about two key components that are beyond benefits, but I'm going to be talking to you about them, that they can truly provide a better way for you to drive business together, okay, with your clients, talking about payroll, talking about workers' compensation, talking about the compliance, the different aspects of these types of items can actually drive a sufficient or a much more needed amount of value from your agency to your clients. And then lastly, we're going to talk about some best practices. You know, as you think about your expertise, where does it lie, right? It may lie specifically in health insurance benefits. Maybe it's ancillary benefits. You know, maybe you have that particular, niche with a specific industry, or type of client that you actually like to work with, right? That's where your level of expertise sits. But have you thought about your business and what your clients are needing, the challenges that they are faced with, the objectives that they are trying to achieve? Have you thought about it beyond just the benefits, that level of expertise that you are showing here today? I wanted to start with actually a survey that was done by the Greater Philadelphia chapter of Health Underwriters. Many of you are probably part of a local chapter here across the country. We are members here locally with the Greater Philadelphia chapter, and they performed a broker survey here in August of last year to the existing membership. Now, it was a pretty comprehensive survey, but one of the questions that were asked was asked around technology and in using technology in different aspects of a client's life. And one of the questions that were addressed was, how are you using payroll technology as an asset? And so think about that a little bit. How many of you here today are actually using, well, one, technology, but using payroll technology as an asset to grow your business, grow retention efforts? How are you maximizing that specific technology on behalf of your clients to not only shed value to them, but also to you? So as the survey results came in, it found actually that fewer than one, so 1 in 5, actually it's fewer than that, actually were using payroll technology as an asset. So you might say, well, Steve, then isn't that telling? I mean, why should I be thinking about payroll technology as an asset? Well, there's a thing called differentiators, right? Adding value. So I just want to share some of the results here. Just real simple here is what this survey found was that actually between never and almost never using payroll technology as an asset, that percentage, those percentages between never and sometimes using payroll technology as an asset was 85%. 85% of agencies here today are not bringing in the use or the value of payroll technology as an asset for their clients. All right. The remaining 15%, was almost always or always. And so why I'm kind of bringing this up here in the beginning is that I want to point to a fact that there's a strong desire from every employer to get through their day, right? When you think about the largest expense or the largest, where is the largest amount of maybe money spent, but time spent within a company, you're going to get focused around these 3 areas. And as a benefits consultant, you're smack dab in the middle, right? The healthcare expenditures are an enormous expense, an enormous amount of time that an employer is going to spend. Now, hopefully, your job is going to create those greater efficiencies and time for them to focus really on their passions, right? Not necessarily on healthcare, but it's on why they're in business to begin with. But when you think about the capital expenditures, the healthcare, and ultimately the wages, the employer is really, if they believed in their widget, they believe that they are producing the best widget available to mankind. It is the best one out there on the market today because it does so many things. They're passionate about that. They're not as passionate per se, about managing the wages and healthcare and maybe the capital expenditure aspect of what they do. And so if we go back to that survey to say that only 15% of agencies today are capitalizing on payroll technology as an asset, let me tell you, they are touching a key activity of that business owner. And if you can tap in to where their challenges, their desires, their objectives are in this area, I'm going to tell you, you're going to be able to drive significant value ultimately to your client. So I want you to think here as we get started here today, I want you to think a little bit here about payroll. We'll also dive into workers' compensation here, but a larger focus here on payroll, thinking about payroll as an asset. Well, Steve, how does that even happen, right? So first off, I think by the end of this webinar, we're going to really allow you to see how you can actually meet the very diverse, the very comprehensive client demands that are on you today. I think most of you would say, hey, Steve, and many of you have told me, you know, listen, compliance is an enormous piece of what my employers deal with on a day-to-day basis, from not just HR, but there's so many other types of compliance risks that are out there for the employer, and I'm looked at as the compliance officer of that company. So I need to find a way to meet these various client compliance demands. Well, payroll, what you will see is that payroll, you driving discussion, conversation, solutions around payroll is going to meet the various client demands that you're being faced with. Neutralizing competition, what you're also going to be able to see very clearly is that you will be able to neutralize the various levels of competition that your agency is facing or is faced with. As you know, there are many national providers of payroll that are also in the business of driving traditional health insurance, health and welfare benefits to business owners left and right. You need to not shy away from this conversation, but you want to make sure you are diving right in to the payroll conversation to really be able to neutralize those competitive threats. Create new revenue streams. Steve, new revenue streams? You know, there's you know, a lot of door openers that in your prospecting efforts that you can use, or retention efforts that you can use, that the discussion of payroll can actually be a precursor to new revenue streams, okay? Whether it be in ancillary benefits or in other solutions or products that your agency may be tied or connected with. It is a great discussion that can create new revenue streams for your agency. And lastly, as you take a deeper dive into the overall business conversation with your clients, you will undoubtedly be able to strengthen client relationships. Your retention numbers should go up dramatically. Your ability to take, you know, maybe you just were able to kind of put your toe in the door or toe in the water rather, I don't want to toe in the door, toe in the water by actually selling dental insurance or an ancillary benefit to that client. Well, here's a way, maybe through this deeper conversation about their business and their largest expense, that you can actually begin to strengthen and start to sell additional products and services that will only strengthen that client relationship even more for the future. So ultimately, while we're talking about using payroll as an asset is ultimately so that you're adding additional value. I think all of you, I mean, you guys have told me, you've told yourselves, right, as you think about growing your agency, you need to find ways to drive value to your clients. And this conversation, this solution, this product, this piece of information is going to greatly enhance the value that you will bring ultimately to your clients. So let's dive into some of the perspectives here. So again, I want you to be put into the business owner's shoes. Okay, now some of you may already be in that capacity, and so God bless you, right? I mean, you're faced with so many of the decisions to run just the day-to-day needs of your agency, and it goes beyond probably just you. Hey, I just want to go sell health insurance. You know, I just want to go do that, but you can't because you're a business owner and you've got so many other decisions that you need to make. But as we get into this conversation, you really need to think like a business owner. You need to think exactly as they're thinking, because when you're coming in each month, each quarter, each year with a renewal, you're talking specifically about your expertise and how it's going to change the face of how they're going to ultimately drive their health and welfare benefits to their employees. You know, you're making a wonderful plan design that's going to fit their needs. If you're not thinking about what that business owner was doing about 2 hours prior to your meeting, you need to have that conversation, and it might begin to look a little like this. So if we looked at that typical day of what that business owner is going through, I'm going to put it in the perspective, I hope, of how you kind of see it, right? From an employee level, from a benefit kind of perspective. But let's look at some of these daily tasks, and I'm not going to go into every single one of these, but we'll first start with planning and staffing, right? For, you know, as you're talking with employers, I mean, at least in your prospecting efforts, you want to find out, hey, how have you grown? What are you doing to grow your business? How are you hiring? Do you expect to add a different new location? Do you expect to add a new product that's going to add a new plant that will hire X amount of new employees, right? So that employer, that business owner, really needs to think about how they're going to plan and staff, right? And so when you think about the early goings-on of hire, you've got a candidate search, right? So you've got an applicant tracking system, whether it's an Excel spreadsheet or certainly a platform that is being used, but you've got to then turn them into a candidate, which ultimately is going to turn that applicant into a new hired employee. But before you bring them on board, there's pre-employment screening, there's background checks, there's drug testing, there's those things that need to be screened prior to that employee coming on board. From a compliance, a risk aspect, it behooves an employer to dive into that realm. You've got, you know, the standard compliance type of items from employee handbook, right, to just the simple labor law posters that need to be posted in the cafeteria, you know, room, so that everyone can see exactly what those specific rules are. And so, you know, you come into the picture in regard to the HR advice, the support, you know, these questions just about the new hire, what am I able to do? Do I need to create a new job description because I'm not getting enough resumes? I mean, these are questions that you are very much in tune with and can drive some specific advice to. Most brokers, as I speak with them across the country, they are majorly tasked with creating HR advice and support. And you act as a consultant in many, many ways. And so these three things come into play here in regard to just that new hire piece. But let's continue to think that that day is continuing for the employer, because they're not hiring an employee every day. They're working and managing with their existing employees each and every day. And so, you know, the first, as that new hire comes on board, where is that first data point going to be entered? Well, unless it's in an HR management system of some kind or technology platform, it's going to be going right into payroll. We need to pay that person. And so, you know, the daily activity of collecting hours worked, hours paid but not worked, PTO tracking, all of those things need to be accumulated within that payroll service. Next, you have tax filing services. So if you're running payroll, we've got taxes to pay. We've got it on a federal level, we have it on a local level, and those need to be paid accurately and timely. How is that being done? Boy, here's where you come in, right? The health and welfare benefits. I mean, this is an area clearly of your expertise, but it's also a key, it can be a time consumer for that employer, for that business owner. They're looking at, you know, creating, we need to get benefits enrolled, we have a waiting period, we have status event changes that will occur throughout the year, qualifying events that occur that are going to affect what deductions are in payroll and so forth. And so the health and welfare benefit piece is a huge piece to what they do. We have workers' compensation, and we're going to dive into that, but it's generally a requirement for employers to provide workers' compensation insurance to their employees. As you guys know, it's our passion here at PrimePay that if an employer is going to offer a group health plan, that they must pair it with a pre-tax benefit account option, so such as a flexible spending plan or an HRA or an HSA, or in the very least, a premium-only plan to pre-tax those health insurance premiums for the employees. So again, you have elections, you have deductions, you have changes, life event changes that occur throughout a given day or week or pay period. You have retirement plans. You know, what is the employer contributing to in a retirement plan? What are they not contributing? How many are participating? Am I top heavy? There's a lot of those questions that an employer is going to have to decipher and work through each and every day just from a retirement plans. If the employer is maybe of a certain size, I mean, clearly HR technology, that HR manager, business owner is going to need to stay engaged with that particular technology that is being used. Employee scheduling. Wow. You know, do you have employers that offer different shifts and scheduling, a lot of hourly type of employees? Wow, employee scheduling can take an enormous amount of time. What are those employers using to capture that information of those shifts worked or those hours worked during that time? So time and attendance systems, time and labor management systems are truly a must. Merchant services, if the employer has a retail environment, restaurant, retail type of an environment, wow, what are they doing with their point of sale systems, those merchant services to, fees that they're going to pay for people using credit cards and so on and so forth. I mean, again, additional conversations that need to be made. And in this section, this workforce management, clearly HR advice and support is going to be needed and demanded by you, generally here throughout this process. And lastly, and listen, this person's day has not ended here yet. We get kind of through the end of an employee life cycle, whether it be through a retirement or certainly a termination, that certainly may occur. But you've got this phase 3, which, I'm calling here separation. So now the employer needs to consider COBRA. Did I offer a plan that qualifies under COBRA? What needs to be offered as a continuation of that coverage to these employees? And so COBRA, there's going to be activities that employer is going to need to provide for COBRA. Now, maybe based on the situation of the separation, maybe we have some unemployment arbitration or issues that are going on here with that specific former employee. So maybe I need to start to look at some unemployment cost management so that I can curtail this, certainly in the future. But you also have HR technology, and then certainly lastly, as I've included it in every section, HR advice and support is going to be needed all along the way. And so ultimately, all of these items, as you just think about the day-to-day, what that business owner or business owner and team, right, is going to need to go through, their decisions, their financial considerations are being turned in a way to face these daily activities. And they may not be specifically devoted or committed to the products and solutions that you're offering. So if you know more about how the company is actually conducting their business in order to achieve their specific objectives, that's going to allow you to better prepare your HR and benefit solutions that you ultimately are going to roll out to this employer or offer that employer. Okay, so think about all of those activities. And if you're a business owner, you can certainly probably go, Steve, man, I'm right there with you. This is something that we have to deal with each and every day. So let's take this a little step further because, as we think about utilizing or how to utilize payroll as an asset, you might say, well, Steve, so are you saying that we go into our existing client or a prospective client and I'm just supposed to ask the question like, so, hey, how are you managing your payroll? What are you doing with payroll here lately, right? I mean, you could. That's a very open-ended question. So that's a very good way possibly to start that conversation. But I would maybe look at it a little differently. So if you think about how to utilize payroll as an asset for your agency, I think you want to begin to focus your conversation around the very things that you have great expertise at. Right? So it's that health and welfare compliance and administration piece. you might want to begin to ask questions with the client or with your, prospective client. Hey, how are you handling group benefit management through your current payroll provider, whether you're outsourcing that or whether you've internalized that in some way? So what do I mean by group benefit management? I think as a broker, you want to be you want to have the accessibility and the transparency for information. So as you work with your clients and you're driving value to them, the more access that you have to the various, structure of their company, it's going to enable you to actually perform better, to drive greater value to them. So as you think about group benefit management, you could begin to talk to clients about how payroll can drive new hire reporting and what your agency does with new hire reporting. Did you know, broker, that you have the ability to receive a new hire report that will showcase all the new hires that are coming into that employer in that given pay period or that given month? Well, depending on how your agency drives value, that can be very important, right? If you're providing ancillary benefits or health and welfare benefits, that would enable you to possibly reach out to this employee right away, introducing yourself, driving value and education and content about the various products and services that you provide for that specific company. So having those new hires quickly instead of waiting 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, or a longer time to receive that information is very valuable to you, because you could be very proactive in driving new business initiatives, possibly with those new hires. Another big one, though, is terminations. Right? I hear it all the time that brokers do not receive timely termination notices. So for COBRA event purposes, or just to get that information to the carrier on a timely basis, y'all struggle with that. And so did you know that through payroll that you could receive a termination report that will showcase which employees have terminated, which would enable you, depending on how you are acting on behalf of that client, to be able to provide instruction or to provide action to get those employees and those names to those carriers to determine their various eligibilities with those benefits, what have you. Also, think about payroll from a census. Many times you're needing to get that census early, right, from the employer. If the employer does not have an HRIS system, then they are going to need to use payroll for that census source. And so think of, you have great, accurate information in payroll. It's usually the one thing that's updated first. And so it's a great way for you to receive census information, okay, as you look towards future renewal activities or prospecting efforts for that matter. Also, think about W-2 when you get into compliance, right? Depending on the size of employer that you're working with and who you might be prospecting. You also want to talk about the W-2 reporting aspects. And there's two things that, clearly W-2 is a requirement for every employer. This is that general time of year. Employers were supposed to distribute their W-2s to employees here by the end of January, each and every year. So it's a strong requirement. Employers get it. But they need to be reminded that, hey, if you have issued 250 or more W-2s, do you know that you need to still include the employer-sponsored premiums within that W-2? Now, what's brand new here for W-2 reporting is certainly this new qualified small employer HRA, in which the benefit amounts will now need to be included on the W-2 for each employee. So again, you can shine, you can add real value by really driving some specificity around specific compliance items that truly can not only help the employer in fulfilling requirements or obligations, but also can really drive potentially some extra value, but also dollars to your agency as well. And then lastly, and I know I don't need to say this twice, but because I know most of you have been deeply involved in the ACA reporting requirements with your clients. But do note this, that if you are talking to them about payroll and the activities found within payroll, the largest percentage of the data required to fulfill their obligation under 1094 and 1095C or 1095 forms are located within payroll. And having that access, having the ability to be able to converse effectively, communicate effectively with your client about how that data what data needs to be reflected in the ACA forms is huge value. You could have employers that just went over the bubble of 50 employees, their equivalents there last year in 2016, and it's brand new to them here for this year. So here's a great way for you from a prospecting basis or current existing client basis to really drive some value. The next item that I want you to think about in utilizing payroll as an asset is to focus also around this Department of Labor and deduction compliance. And there's two things that I want to point out. I was thinking here about time and labor management. As most of you know, there was a big final rule that came out about the Department of Labor overtime rules. It was final or became final actually back last May, but it was going to be effective here as of December 1st. And as you all know, that did not happen, right? An injunction came forth, and it has been at least delayed or completely taken off the shelves here at this point. But many of you, I know, I've had conversations, many of you saw that as a way to drive specific value to that client, okay? So a time and labor management, whereas you as an agency, you may not have a direct product that you may sell in that relation to that employer, the time and labor management discussion is huge. It truly is a huge opportunity for employers to save a lot of money. So the Department of Labor overtime rules, is that coming back? I don't know. Right now, at least, it seems like it's completely off the table. But that doesn't remove the requirement or obligation for that employer to manage daily shifts, scheduling, the hours worked, the hours not worked but paid, determining paid time off accruals, because what that employer needs to do every day, it's going to add a tremendous amount of time to each of their day if they do not have an efficient way to manage time and labor management. And so shifts and scheduling systems or time clocks, time and attendance systems are a huge way to do that. And to some degree, at least right now, we still have ACA out there, and if employers want to monitor their full-time status or their variable hour employee status, they're going to need to manage that through a time and attendance system so that they can adequately follow someone who is below 30 hours or who is definitely on pace to work 30 hours or more in a given, at least on average over a given time period. So time and labor management is a great conversation to determine, hey, employer, what are you doing in this area? Because I see that you're devoting a tremendous amount of time here, but there may be solutions for you to greatly reduce that. It's a huge area, and certainly one that an employer through the Fair Labor Standards Act is going to have to truly monitor on a regular basis, because it is certainly something that is audited and looked at on a regular basis. Deduction management, I think this is a good one. As you're prospecting or as you are working with your existing clients, I think taking a deeper dive into how an employer is managing their deductions is a great conversation starter. I like to say that it actually can open the door to a much greater conversation. Many of you over the last year, we've talked about just having simple conversations about an employer that has a medical deduction. Are you taking it post-tax or pre-tax, right? If they're taking it post-tax, what a great opportunity for you to talk about a Section 125 plan, which would enable them to save not only, FICA taxes, but certainly from an employee basis, save so much more, in taxes. So having that post-tax, pre-tax talk is wonderful. But what if they say, well, we're doing it pre-tax? Of course. Well, the next question is more of a compliance-related question. We know our agency really likes to dig a little deeper here into some of the compliance requirements and obligations of our clients. And so I see that you're taking this pre-tax, but have you established, have you implemented a Section 125 plan, and when is the last time that you've had it updated? So that there is a great question that can open up the door to a much larger conversation. It also then can lead into hopefully some revenue-bearing opportunities as you begin to talk about potential ancillary benefits that can be used as post-tax or pre-tax, certainly health deductions that would be there as well. So as you look at payroll as an asset, think about it in your world, where your passion is. It's around health and welfare benefits. It's around a lot of these major compliance issues, and you can begin the conversation there, and I'm telling you, it's going to enable you to share a tremendous amount of value and drive potentially a lot more revenue opportunity for your agency. So that's payroll, okay? But there's also a key requirement. I mean, so you have a key requirement in payroll that employers they're generally obligated to pay someone who is working for their organization. And if you're going to pay them, then we're going to need to have you follow the rules, right? And you saw all of those activities that employer, that owner is going through each and every day just to ensure that they're following the rules for that specific employee, all right? But that employer has not just one employee, they have many more. So workers' compensation is that opportunity, I think, or where I want to take you today, where I think that your value can be seen even more. Now, I do want to note, and I'll say it here again in just a couple slides, there are several of you that are partners, not many, I would say, I guess overall, but many partners of ours that do offer workers' compensation here today. So this isn't necessarily new information, but the vast array of our partners are not necessarily working in this workers' compensation area. And so I just think that there is some value that is being missed, that you have an opportunity to have some discussions here where maybe you don't have your full expertise, but you can add real value here to this conversation. All right? So we're not going to go super basic here for all of these. But I want to cover a few things here with you and really focus on a couple key things on the compliance side of workers' compensation, because I think that gets an employer thinking. It gets them thinking about how are they driving their workers' compensation policy, how did they implement it, how did they write it, how are they paying for it, and ultimately the coverage that's provided. How can we ensure, right? Workers' compensation is on-the-job insurance for injured workers. But there's also got the carrot and the stick, right? It's also there to help an employer maybe drive greater safety measures, right? I mean, workers' compensation, yes, it is about a premium that is being paid, and it is about ensuring that someone gets covered for an on-the-job, injury that occurs. But it's also to put some perspective for that employer to think about, hey, am I making my job areas, am I making them as safe as I can, for my workers? And so you've really got that carrot and stick here that is working here in this workers' compensation insurance. So workers' compensation is going to provide an injured employee with payments for all those that I list there. So, lost wages, that's a simple thing. Medical bills can be something different. Certainly a longer vocational kind of therapy or rehabilitation is going to be a lot higher claim. But certainly this can also include partial disability and all the way to death benefits. Okay, so if we think about workers' compensation just in the simplest form, it's on-the-job insurance for injured workers. That's why employers are utilizing that. So just a quick did you know? Did you know that, laws vary by state? Yeah, what? You thought everything was uniform? No. So keep in mind that as you work with clients, there are many of you who are, adjacent, really adjacent to another state. You live right there near the border, and so you might be working with clients in various states. Well, do know that laws on workers' comp will vary by state. Now, most states do require mandatory coverage for all employers with 2 or more employees. That is the general rule of thumb. But it actually, did you know, that it's not required in Texas or Oklahoma? Interesting, right? So what you're going to find here is that as you look at the structure of workers' compensation, there's a tremendous amount of similarities as you look at it state by state. But each state is different in how those calculations are assumed, so on and so forth. So let's just see, just real quickly, what makes up those costs and the premiums. So rates are based on some factors, key factors, and then some key elements. And so we're going to touch on both, but just real quick. So these rates are based on these key factors. Every premium is determined by the type and industry of the business. So when you think about just the SIC code, are you a manufacturing company? Are you blue collar? Are you white collar? Are you administrative? Do you work on roofs? Are you in the retail environment? So that type and industry of the business is really a key factor. It's also, though, your premium, your rate is also looking at previous workers' comp loss history. So most carriers are going to look back 2 to 3 years generally in regard to your loss history, and also they're going to determine how that loss history compares to other companies in the same industry. All right, so those are 3 key factors. Let's look at some additional key elements now to these to the cost. So as I had stated earlier, premium rates do vary by state. So some are competitive rates, some are not in certain states. But premium rates will vary from state to state. Your element, a key element, is a job class. So as you are determining rates, you need to establish the job class, which is going to determine a specific rate of that premium or of that cost for each of the employees. So whether they're in an administrative role, they're in a sales role, they're in a more of a worker, bee laborer, type of a position, that job class will need to be stated. Rates are calculated generally per $100 of payroll. Okay, so the larger amount of your payroll is also going to dictate or actually help to increase a workers' comp premium. And expense constant, so kind of those minimums apply based on the industry class, okay, that's going to be there. So there's a lot to that, and I know that doesn't provide you with what that exact rate will be, but just know that there are several factors and elements that are going to produce a different rate, a premium, for each employer that you work with. So did you know that there is a required audit? So each year, a carrier is going to provide an audit of the workers' compensation policy for each and every employer. So at audit, there's a potential for additional premium charges, depending, not always, if the actual payroll is higher than what was originally projected. And I'm going to talk about here a couple of the payment options, and that will paint a picture as to why this audit could be more or less based on how someone is paying for it. So the workers' comp, the payment options, there's generally 2 different ways to pay for the premiums as an employer. You have a traditional way, and you have a pay-as-you-go way, okay? Now, PrimePay, being a payroll company, we do offer a pay-as-you-go, so I do want to just lay that out there that we do offer that here. But I do want to share the differences, and there are positives and negatives to both sides of the equations, okay? Ultimately, dependent on where that employer is needing to go, the solution and the amount of that premium that you're able to offer, that's going to probably dictate kind of which direction, which payment option that employer is going to choose. So let's first look, let's just do some quick comparisons. So the traditional method is an employer purchases the policy and they now are going to have a monthly billing fee and checks to write. So each month they're going to have an invoice, if you will, and they're going to need to pay that each and every month. A pay-as-you-go is specifically tied to the payroll and the payroll processed each and every month. And it's generally automatically debited or paid each and every month. So there is no monthly bills per se or checks to write. It's automatically deducted from their payroll based on the amount of their payroll and the job class codes, that have been entered, their industry, SIC code, all of that, and that's automatically paid. So they don't have that check to write, if you will, each month. So on the traditional side, you have the potential for additional charges for late payments, but you don't have that on the pay-as-you-go side, just simply because you're paying for that as you run payroll each month. So there's not going to be that specific issue. You have audit adjustments that will occur under the traditional method. Now, you can't get away from audit adjustments, but through pay-as-you-go, you will have greater minimized audit adjustments. So we cannot remove an audit in the pay-as-you-go. You will still have an audit, but you have the ability to have it be more minimized because the pay-as-you-go is tied directly to the payroll throughout the year versus on the traditional basis, you might have started with a specific payroll record, right, of where your payroll is, but through changes that occurred or what have you, you could have a bigger or lesser adjustment based on that change on a traditional basis. There's going to be a down payment required under the traditional method, no premium down payment for pay-as-you-go, and then really a larger overall down payment for traditional overall, which isn't that great, but and pay-as-you-go, much smaller type of an overall down payment because you're doing it again, you're basing it right based on payroll. So benefits, to your clients by certainly looking at a pay-as-you-go could eliminate a large premium down payment and certainly will go a long way to minimize a lot of the audit adjustments. Kind of removes at least maybe some of those surprises that an employer is going to receive. So I don't want to go into this too heavily. I just want to provide just some background that just like any regulatory environment, workers' compensation rules, laws, the bureaus in each state, they're actively pursuing changes. Not always. Some changes don't occur as rapidly here in workers' compensation, in the workers' compensation area. But I just wanted to cover a couple just to give some examples here. The National Council on Compensation Insurance, that's this NCCI, there's a lot of discussion around experience rating, and what brought about some changes here from NCCI was that their research had shown that the existing experience rating amounts were just too low, that there hadn't been changes in most states over the years to account for, updates and just dollar amounts that needed to be changed. And so what we're finding is that in these states that I list here, there are now changes as of January 1st, 2017. Basically what NCCI is doing is for the future, will be regular updates to the experience rating. And beginning here in January, these states that I list or that I reflect here are going to have some changes with their premiums based on the experience rating. So you just want to be aware of that. Now also, in New Jersey, here at the end of last year took a look at their schedule rating. So back here in November, and effective here January 1st, they have changed some of the schedule ratings. They've increased how much you can credit or debit a client from a 20% credit or debit up to a 25%. And there's other variables that were changed as well. Now, do know here for the state of New Jersey that although the change was effective here January 1st, due to programming and such, it was not actually effective as of January 14th. And also state specific, and I'm not, again, I don't want to go through each one of these. You'll have this in recording form, but also for our broker concierge partners, you'll have this in slide deck form, so you can dig here a little deeper. But I just want to show that each state is different. Their penalties are different. Their structure is just different in how they're actually acquiring that or determining that premium. And so for Colorado here that I'm showing, Massachusetts, New York, Virginia, Wisconsin, each one of these has a different type of exposure and obligation here to your clients. And so you just need to be aware of that. It's good to talk about that with your clients and to bring that up. So, basically, you just want to keep in mind that failure to provide workers' compensation coverage per state law, it can result in a disruption of business and significant penalties. So it is very important that you are having this discussion with your clients to ensure that they're following the specific compliance requirements. California, just to give you a quick background, this will be the last state that I cover here today as an example, but this was also a recent change in the state of California. So, and this goes towards experience rating. It seems like a lot of the states were making adjustments as to experience rating here as we headed into 2017. So just some background, it was mandatory, okay, for all eligible employers, for one, okay. The experience rating benchmarks an employer against others in its industry, okay. So that's what experience rating is. It's benchmarking that specific company to certainly other employers in its industry, and also it is benchmarking them against historical claim experience. Okay, so that's what that experience rating is all about. And so, it's meant through these premiums to provide a direct financial incentive for employers to reduce accidents. So I spoke about before about that's what workers' compensation is there to do. One, to provide the benefit to the employees, but also to be that stick that says, hey, employer, make sure that your work areas are as safe as possible. So approximately 20% of California policies are experience rated, but it represents almost 90% of statewide premiums. So it's actually a very large chunk to what the premiums are total in the state of California. Since 2010, the experience rating has been the first $7,000 of each claim is considered a primary claim and counted fully in the experience rating formula. Okay, so $7,000 was the number. So as we look here now on the slide, the effective date here was January 1st, and what is changing is the fixed point, split point, the variable split, moves from $7,000 to a variable split point plan. So but one key point that you can mention to your clients is that there's no overall kind of pure premium impact to the client. So that actually is a very good thing, okay? So I've also provided a quick summary here for those of you who do a lot of business in California. You're just going to want to make yourself available or knowledgeable, certainly in regard to this specific compliance item. But just as you see there, and I'm not going to go through every single one, but you see there kind of the second bullet on split point equaled $7,000. Well, now it can vary. It can be from $4,500 to $75,000. But the goal here is not to create a more financial burden on employers. It actually has the capability of reducing the impact of large shock loss on these workers' compensation policies, and actually potentially simplify the formula down to only about 3 variables, which is a very good thing. So in the end, this should have no overall premium impact, but also be able to just have a modest impact on any new plans, new policies that would be affected. So as you think about workers' comp, you may not have thought about workers' comp, just thinking about it from a compliance standpoint, that you're in a position as a benefits consultant to be able to reach out to clients to not only touch the health and welfare side of things, but again, dig deeper into the business, find out what they're dealing with, what are their challenges, how are you dealing with these new experience rating rules and regs that are now impacting your workers' compensation insurance. So there are real benefits to you. You can enhance your value by increasing your service offering. If you are providing workers' comp today, I mean, that's an excellent resource and solution. But your agency may not be offering workers' comp benefits here today or policies. That's where you can partner. You can partner with someone like PrimePay to really drive or enhance your value and your overall solution set that you would give to your employees. This also can improve your competitive edge in the marketplace. If you're talking about workers' comp and providing real solutions to your employers, I mean, you're removing threats, right? So it improves your competitive edge, sharpens kind of all the tools that you have in your shed, in your toolbox. And this also can vastly, right, when you think about stickiness, can increase your retention just to more increased client touch points. Even if you didn't sell the workers' comp policy, but you assisted and supported and really drove a greater conclusion, a greater result for that employer by your communication, then you're going to increase your retention. That client is going to rely, right? They're going to be more dependent on what your agency is offering. So as we kind of summarize here and think about today, as we think about these strategies in kind of creating more assets within your agency, expanding the dialogue here with your clients, I guess I want you to think again just about your differentiator. And I spoke early on about, you could have a differentiator that's just tied to health and welfare benefits. You know what? I create and implement the best plans that are the best fit for my clients. I save them money. I provide them with the networks, the doctors, the cost. I mean, I give them a complete package. I'm a complete expert. That's what I do. That's my differentiator in the marketplace. It might be on ancillary benefits. You know what? I know disability and I know cancer insurance and I know dental and vision so well that it gets me in the door to so many other things. That's a key differentiator. I know my product there. You might be an expert in self-funded plans. You might say as an agency, you know what? Our key differentiator is service-oriented success. I mean, we have the best service imaginable to our clients. Or you might say, you know what? We are the expert in the area for small groups or for large groups. And that might be very good. In fact, most of you are experts in all of those areas to some degree. But again, that's on the health and welfare benefit discussion. What could it be? What could your differentiator be if you were talking about your overall ideas, your skills, your expertise, your analysis, but you now begin to apply it to the overall business needs of your clients? Because as you begin to think about the employer and what their daily tasks are, it's not always about selling their widget. It's not always getting a health plan implemented. So by expanding that dialogue, what we hope, and through this webinar, what we want to get across is that you can actually more aptly go get growth. You can drive business, more business for your agency, right? I think we always say, you've heard the phrase, well, hey, if they win, we win, right? You win, I win. So if you can drive success financially, you help your clients achieve objectives throughout the months, the quarter, the year, it gives you an opportunity to increase, for you to win as well. So just a couple ideas. I want you to go get growth. I want you to get to growing. And so if you can begin to take maybe what you've done in the past where you have just been, you've basically highlighted those key plan designs, insert your differentiator, right? I'm a self-funded guru. All right, so that's your plan design, so what you've done in the past, but now you're taking your ideas, your skills, your expertise. Honestly, the employer wants to have more dependency on you. You want your client to have more dependency on you. So now begin to take those ideas, skills, expertise, and analysis and align those benefits and solutions with the employer's business strategy. Not your strategy, but aligning it with their business strategy. Second, the stronger your assets are for an agency, the stronger your foundation is to be able to do so much more. And so, you need to build on not just the benefit-only focus, which is probably a key component of what you're discussing today, but expand that discussion to the greater complex needs of your clients. And lastly, as we say within our Broker Concierge, our partner program, we talk about the broker of the future. I think most of you who are on the call here today, you guys are brokers of the future. You've potentially moved from that commodity selling aspect to that consultative selling. But you continually need to think outside of the box, continue to expand your knowledge base, build your confidence in these other areas such as payroll and workers' compensation to be able to drive greater opportunities and value for your clients, which will also revert back to you in increased revenue and retention of your clients. So with that, we have partnered with the Hartford Insurance Company. We work with them on a regular basis in regard to providing workers' compensation policies for our many clients. And we would like, through the efforts here of Hartford, want to provide a workers' compensation promo to each of you. So starting Monday, February 13th, all right, next Monday, every qualified workers' compensation lead that we quote, so you refer into PrimePay and we quote through the Hartford, you will receive $25 for every qualified lead. I didn't say written policy or closed, just a lead. So if you would like to get out there with existing clients and say, hey, would you like a second opinion? I have a partner that can assist and drive. I know you're dealing with a lot of compliance issues with workers' comp. I have an opportunity here to potentially save you some money or at least provide a second opinion in regard to how you're handling workers' comp today. So this promotion is actually going to go through basically the end of April, Friday, April 28th. Is when the promotion will end, and there is no limit on what can be earned. Now, some of you might say, Steve, we sell some workers' comp for our agency, and that is beautiful, okay? That is a wonderful thing. And so I want to throw out this disclaimer for all of our current broker concierge partners. Several of you have selected workers' compensation as a core product of your agency, and if that is the case, we will not, this promotion is not for you, okay? We are, as we've stated before, we'll state it again, we'll state it forever, we will not intentionally compete against you for workers' compensation business. So if that is a core product of yours, we will not interfere with that. In fact, we want you to go ahead and get in front of your clients and drive that business with them. So this promotion is specifically for those agencies who are not in that specific market, and we want to give them the opportunity to really hone in on these specific value compliance topics to drive value here to their clients. So look for information here, and I'll follow up in regard to this promo. So lastly, as I've stated before, we've got the business owner in the middle. And actually, I should have had a picture of you, right? Consider yourself side by side here with the business owner. But by talking about payroll and workers' compensation, I hope that you've seen here through the webinar today that you can really utilize it in expanding the dialogue, in driving a greater conversation about the business objectives of the employer as you think back to all of those tasks and activities that that employer is being demanded to do. You have an opportunity as a benefits broker to truly meet those various client demands. by talking about payroll, you're going to determine how that employer is utilizing their specific payroll provider. You may not even know that that payroll provider or that specific entity is actually going after their health and welfare business. So you're going to want to talk about payroll and get a better understanding of how that employer is using it, so that way you can best neutralize the competition. You also, I think I've shown you can create some awesome new revenue streams by just bringing up a few facets of what that employer is dealing with on a daily basis in regard to payroll and workers' comp. And absolutely, you have the ability to strengthen client relationships, which will add a tremendous value to your agency and your clients here in 2017. So with that, that will conclude our webinar here today. We want to thank you for attending. This webinar was really geared and designed around enhancing the value of your agency. If you are not a Broker Concierge member here today, a partner with us, I would ask that you seek and reach out to our Broker Concierge team here today. We have some excellent ideas, thoughts, strategies, marketing opportunities that we can offer to you to really begin to wrap maybe a much more detailed solution set of payroll, workers' comp, pre-tax benefit accounts, ERISA wrap services. We have the ability to really wrap all of those services around your agency so that you can go immediately to your clients and drive real value. So please connect with our Broker Concierge team here today, and they would love to share more about how we're working with brokers across the country to enhance their agency. So look for the webinar follow-up materials. We will be providing the link to the recording, and to our BC partners, you will be receiving a presentation slide deck of the material today. We will also include our most recent updated payroll ebook for you for your viewing, so that you just get maybe greater understanding about payroll. We're also going to provide a short list of kind of those prohibited items, you know, for workers' compensation qualified leads. There's always some of those, right? So we want to provide that quick list so that you can easily identify those clients who would be active opportunities for you in the workers' comp area. And we want to invite you to our next webinar that will be on March 1st. We have a great topic that will be coming up, and so look for an invite to come here shortly in regard to that specific webinar. So I appreciate your time here today. Thank you for the time that you've spent with me. I hope that I have shared some good content that will help you grow your business today and certainly throughout 2017. Thank you for your partnership with PrimePay. That will conclude our webinar, and you have a great day, and we look forward to seeing you at our next webinar. Thank you.